Chapter 1, The Dreamer. On the night I was born, my dad and one of his buddies were watching football. When it was time to choose a name for his third son, Dad decided to name me after All-American running back and later wide receiver, Rashad. At first, my mom thought it was foolishness, but when she discovered that Rashad means thinker and counselor, she agreed. I haven't always been a thinker or a counselor. Those qualities came along as I grew older, but I've always loved football. Long before I knew the origin of my own name, I dreamed of being out on that field. So it was no surprise that as soon as I was old enough to play, I followed in my namesake's footsteps. I was 6 years old the first time Mom took me to Jump Park to play Pee Wee football with the town rec league. Being the size I was, and because the league was organized by weight and not age, I was bumped up to a team with boys who were as old as 8 or 9. As I waved goodbye to buddies my age and walked across the field to join the older guys, I felt nervous and excited. 2 sentences ping-ponged in my mind. Oh man, I gotta play with the older kids. And oh man, I get to play with the older kids. I've been eagerly awaiting this day. As far as I was concerned, there was no better position than a running back. These were undeniably the fiercest guys on the field, relentless, resilient athletes with unbelievable endurance. They ran through defenders like steam locomotives, and when they went down, they fell onto the turf like ballerinas. They were quick and agile. They had great peripheral vision and could see where the holes were in the defense. This was really important since at any time there are 11 people trying to kill them. They were hard to tackle because they had a good center of gravity. They were illusionists who could mislead the defense, quickly cutting into a different direction. And whether they liked it or not, they were able to take a beating. As a kid, I possessed very few of these qualities. I wore glasses that would slide down my nose when I got sweaty. I was heavy, so when I hit the ground, I hit hard. I tired easily, sometimes struggling to breathe. And yet none of those things caused me to doubt that I could achieve my dream. I had been watching football my whole life. My big brothers both played football. Butch wore blue and white for E.C. Glass High School. I don't remember many of his games because he was 14 years older than me. Brian was in high school when I first started playing football, and he rocked red and black for Jefferson Forest High School. And we'd all watch NFL games on Sunday afternoons in our living room with Dad, my cousins, aunts, and uncles. I was confident that on that first day of Pee Wee League because I already saw myself as a successful running back. When Brian played for Jefferson Forest, I'd run around the sidelines playing football with the other players' little brothers and sisters. With every pass, handoff, or run, I imagined I was out there on the field like the Cavaliers I idolized. In my imagination, I wasn't just running the ball for Jefferson Forest High. I was running it for my beloved Arizona Cardinals, who also wore those iconic red and black colors. So when Coach blew his whistle to gather the team together, I focused my attention on him. He instructed us to go stand by the volunteers who would be coaching the various positions. Offensive linemen would meet at the 50-yard line. Quarterbacks would meet at the 20-yard line. Running backs would meet at the 40-yard line, and so on. All right, the coach instructed, go meet your coaches. Wearing a bucket helmet with a mouthpiece that was way too big, I marched straight to the coach who would be working with the running backs. The coach took one look at me and said, "Hey man, I think you're in the wrong place. The offensive linemen are over there." He pointed toward the center of the field. But I would not be dismissed so easily. When I'd paused to catch my breath on the sidelines of Jefferson Forest games, I'd watch the players who ran the ball down the field, darting past the defense and dodging tackles. I could see myself weaving past defenders, taking gazelle-like strides into the end zone, where I humbly looked to the heavens to thank God for victory. I studied greats like Emmitt Smith, Eddie George, and Curtis Martin. When I watched them move down the field, I could see myself in their cleats. I had a very clear sense that I was destined to play running back, and no one was going to keep me from realizing the vision I had for my future. As all the boys sorted themselves out, I started to argue with the coach. "I want to play for you," I told him. He paused to choose his words carefully. "I think you're going to be a great offensive lineman. Why don't you try that today?" Feeling confused, I shook my head. "What's your name?" he asked. Frustrated, I mumbled, "Rashad." Calling out to the offensive line coach, he hollered, "Hey, Cliff, can Rashad work with you?" Cliff took one look at me and flagged me over. Why wasn't anyone listening to me? "Come on over here, little man," he called, sounding happy to have me. Grudgingly, I headed over to his squad of offensive linemen. As far as I was concerned, their jobs were boring. I knew that all they got to do was block for the runner. I did what I was told, but muttered under my breath, "This isn't over." I spent the practice learning to engage an opponent. It felt more like sumo wrestling than football. And when we were finally released from practice, I stomped over to our car, where Mom was patiently waiting for me behind the wheel, eager to hear about my first practice. Mom, smiling from ear to ear, asked me, "How was practice?" Brow furrowed, I slumped into the back seat and buckled my seatbelt. I didn't like it. She looked surprised. "Really?" she asked. "Why not, baby?" She pulled out the dusty parking lot and onto the main road, and I kept myself from looking back at the football field. I reported as if I was tattling on one of my big brothers. I didn't like my position. She nodded her head as she listened. "And why didn't you like it, Rashad?" "Because I don't want to be an offensive lineman," I answered. "What position do you want to play?" she asked. "I want to be a running back." I sulked in silence the rest of the ride home. As we rumbled up our long gravel driveway, I continued to fume, my frustration rising with each step I climbed to our split-level home on Cimarron Road. I pulled open the door that always left unlocked because our residential neighborhood was so safe, wishing I could slam it behind me. My dad and Brian were in the kitchen when I walked in, and I launched into an angry diatribe about how unfairly I'd been treated. Finally, Dad had heard enough. "Boy, just play offensive lineman." Really? My own dad wasn't going to take my side? It felt like the whole world was against me. Persistence. Every practice, I badgered the coaches to let me play running back. Finally, they put me at fullback to keep me quiet. I heard one coach mutter under his breath, "Let him block from the backfield and he'll be all right." It worked out for about one practice. I continued to press, my 6-year-old self utterly determined to follow this dream. After several weeks, when I finally wore the coaches down, they let me practice with the running backs, but it seemed like the concession was made to only shut me up. I never got the ball, and the other kids got far more attention when it came to training. Even then, I knew I didn't fit the mold for an ideal running back, at least not on the outside. But inside, it was all I wanted. Daily, I'd remind the coaches, "I want to run the ball," as if they'd had forgotten from the previous day's requests. My pestering went on day after day, practice after practice. I didn't let up the entire season, or the next, or the next. And yet my coaches still refused to play me. As a kid built for blocking, it would have been easy enough to resign myself to being an offensive lineman. At least I'd have been out there on the field. I also could have been less hard-headed about insisting that the coach play me at running back. I could have accepted the position I'd been assigned or refrained from my daily announcing my resistance. But if I had done either one, this was one of those first if decisions for me. My life would have unfolded very differently than it has. At the time, I know I just seemed like I was being kind of obnoxious, but it's because I knew what I was capable of, and I was hanging on to my dream for dear life. Trying something new. Although football was my passion, I'd always been interested in trying new things, like learning to play an instrument, going out for a new sport, or trying a new hobby. Toward the end of each Pee Wee football season, Mom and I would start to see kids gathering at Jump Park to begin baseball season. I never paid them much attention. I was so focused on my own sport. But at the end of my 4th season of Pee Wee, when I was about 9, Mom asked, "Rashad, do you want to try baseball?" I had never played baseball or even watched baseball, but since it had the word ball in it, I was game. "Sure," I answered. "What is it?" Mom explained the basics of the game to me, but I now know it probably would have been better to have watched a game before playing one. And because my football team had gone to the finals and become league champs, I was 2 weeks late joining the baseball team. My first day, my new baseball team had a game. I showed up in an old pair of Butch's baseball pants that were too tight, with a mitt of my dad's that Mom had found for me. After introducing myself to the coach, I threw on a black shirt and hat he gave me. Then I tossed a ball back and forth with my friend Mark during warm-ups. When the coach called us in, we gathered around him for instructions. Some kid handed me a bag of sunflower seeds, and as I looked around, I could see that other kids were eating them. Putting a seed in my mouth and passing the bag to the next guy, I thought, this is a weird sport. The coach had a clipboard and began scribbling down a lineup as he announced it to us players. Probably pegging me as a power hitter because of my size, he said, "Rashad, you can bat fourth." I had no idea what was going on or what batting fourth even meant, but I was happy to be outside playing. The first batter hit the ball, ran to the base to the right of the home plate, and stayed there. The second batter swung and missed once before hitting the ball right to the pitcher and running toward first base. The pitcher threw the ball to first before the runner arrived, and the umpire hollered that he was out. I didn't understand all the rules yet, but I suspected that out was bad. My hunch was confirmed when I saw my teammate walk back to the dugout looking defeated. Mark was up third. First pitch, he swung and missed. Second pitch, he swung and missed. He didn't swing at the third pitch, which looked a little high to me anyway. When Mark hit the fourth pitch, he ran to the base the first batter had run toward, but was tagged out before he got there. Like the player before him, I watched Mark mope as he dragged himself back to the bench. "Rashad, you're up," my coach yelled to me. I'd already put on one of those plastic helmets that spilled out of the equipment bag and chosen a bat. Not eager to meet the same fate as Mark, I wanted to get some clarity on my marching orders. "Coach," I asked, "you want me to hit the ball and run to that base?" "No," he clarified. "I want you to hit the ball and run to all the bases." Filing away my instructions, I stepped up to the batter's box and waited for the pitch. The first pitch hit the dirt before bouncing over the plate, but I swung anyway. I missed. "Strike," the umpire announced. The second pitch sailed over the plate, but I swung and missed again. Each miss only fueled my resolve to make contact and send the ball flying. I pushed my glasses up my nose, then holding my bat the way I'd seen the first three batters do, I waited for the next pitch. As the pitch whizzed toward the plate, I swung with all my might and felt the crack of the bat against the ball. Hands stinging, I saw the ball soar past the infield and fly into the grassy area beyond. Dropping my bat, I took off running straight to third base. I'd seen what happened at first base, and I didn't want any part of that. So I ran to third, tagged it, and started running right back to home plate. The center fielder had relayed the ball to the shortstop, who had no idea what to do with it. The crowd was also befuddled. If I had been a younger kid, they probably would have started waving and shouting for me to run to first. But I was 9, old enough to know better, and they couldn't figure out what I was doing. After thinking it over, the shortstop threw the ball to the pitcher, who threw it to the catcher. Too late, I had already tagged home plate. I was high-fiving some of my friends when the coach started yelling at me. I tried to high-five the coach, but he was not having it. "What was that?" he demanded. Glancing at the faces around me, I couldn't figure out why everyone else wasn't as excited as I was. "What are you talking about, coach? I scored." He remained unimpressed. "Rashad, what were you doing out there?" he asked again. I calmly explained. 2 other guys got out at first, so I went to third. I thought it was a pretty smart strategy. My coach did not. That was my first and last season of baseball, though I learned a very important lesson. There are no shortcuts. If I was going to accomplish anything, especially my dream of being a running back, I was going to have to do it the hard way. I wouldn't succeed at every practice or every game, but I had to keep running to first base, or else I'd never make it home. A few months after my ill-fated baseball season, while Mom was doing errands, another activity caught my attention. When we got out of the car, I looked in the window of a local dance studio. A class of kids my age were dancing in rhythmic step with one another. "What's that?" I asked Mom. "Come on, Rashad," she hurried me, focused on her to-do list. "Let's go. That's called tap dancing." I was captivated, and I continued thinking about those bouncy kids throughout the day. That evening, Mom called Dad and me to the dinner table. As always, Mom asked about my day, what I had learned, and what I'd done, but Dad stayed silent, focusing on his meal. When I was young, he never took much of an interest in what I was doing. I was so hungry for a good word from him. "Great job, Rashad," or "I'm proud of you," or "I love you," but those words never came. As we prayed and started eating, I announced, "I want to do tap dance." Dad just about spit his mouthful of food. "What?" he asked, shocked. Mom explained, "Today when we went to the post office, Rashad saw a tap dance class." I'd been intrigued by the performance I'd seen, and while other boys I knew might have thought dancing was too girly, it never crossed my mind. It just looked fun to me, but activities cost money. And although we had everything we needed, we didn't have extra money for dance classes. Both of my parents tried to dissuade me, but I kept begging to take tap. Finally, Dad came up with a plan that appeased me. "Let's just get him some taps," he suggested, and put them on his church shoes. That worked for me. A few weeks later, when the clickety-clack of my Sunday shoes was still new, I was begging Mom to take ballet lessons. I'd heard that it was a great way to improve the balance I needed as a running back. I was still chasing that dream, even if it meant exchanging my cleats for toe shoes. Whatever I could do to get better for next season, I'd do it. "Rashad, are you sure?" Mom asked. "Yes," I insisted. "It will help me with football." I could tell by the tone of her voice she wasn't convinced. "Well," she hedged, "I'll think about it." A few days later, she was flipping through television channels and saw the Nutcracker Ballet was playing on PBS. She'd always been interested in both dance and the theater, but as the oldest of 9 children, she'd spent her time caring for younger siblings. She paused to watch the graceful dance unfolding on the screen. Remembering my insistent pleas, she asked, "So this is what you want to do, Rashad?" I'd been busy playing with a remote-controlled race car and looked up at the TV. "Wait," I demanded. "What are they wearing?" Mom patiently explained, "Ballet dancers wear tights and leotards when they dance." "Really?" I asked. She confirmed it. Quicker than you could plie or jeté, ballet lost all appeal. "Nah," I confirmed, I'm out. And that was the end of my dance aspirations, at least for the next 21 years. Big dreams. One of my favorite memories from childhood was betting on football with my dad. He never rooted for one particular team, but instead typically cheered for the front runner. I bet on whatever team was playing Dad's team, but we had an understanding that if the Arizona Cardinals were playing, I'd always have them. I loved the red and black because those were the colors we played in at Jefferson Forest High. There was also a particular player I was enamored with who played for another team. He was number 32, Jamal Anderson of the Atlantic Falcons. I just loved to imitate him when he did his famous Dirty Bird celebration dance in the end zone after making a touchdown. Funny thing is, both teams had bird mascots and both teams wore the same colors. So for the longest time, whenever my Cardinals scored, I do the Dirty Bird all around my living room. I actually believed he played for my Cardinals. I wonder why nobody ever told me that Anderson was a Falcon. Maybe they got a kick out of it, or maybe they just didn't want to bust my bubble. One thing's for sure, when I was moving my feet and flapping my wings, I could see myself in the Cardinals' end zone, celebrating my own touchdown. So anyway, Dad and I would make these fake bets on every game, and I would carefully record it in a log that contained a running total of our wages. To date, I'm waiting for him to pay me the $1.2 million he owes me from those bets. Those silly bets were a lot like the dreams I had for my life back then. They were big. I'll be straight with you. I knew I didn't have the kind of physique, speed, lungs, or vision that would make me likely to be successful as a running back. I knew I didn't have the natural skill and gifts that others, like my brother Brian, had been given. But I had two things some folks don't: big dreams and determination. Maybe you have big dreams for your life. I hope you do. Perhaps like me, you want to achieve athletic success, or maybe you want to excel in school so that you can go to college and score your dream job. Maybe you see yourself on a Broadway stage or selling out a concert venue or receiving an Academy Award for film editing. If you close your eyes and glimpse that moment of future success, I want you to hold on to that dream. But maybe you're like a lot of kids who face challenges. Maybe you haven't dared to let yourself dream. Perhaps the challenges you've faced have kept you from dreaming. For instance, if no one in your family has ever gone to college, you may be afraid to claim that dream. I get that. Or you want to be a doctor but don't know how you'll ever pay for your education. It might feel easier to not dream at all. If you struggle to read, you might be afraid to dream of high school graduation. If that's you, if you don't have a dream for your life because you're afraid to hope for what seems out of reach, I'm giving you permission to dream. Yes, there will be challenges along the way. It will take commitment, hard work, and endurance to achieve your dream. But no matter how big the challenges seem today, I can assure you they will not have the final word on who you become. God made you to flourish, and God's Spirit gives you glimpses of the good that He has in store for you. Whatever the equivalent of the Dirty Bird celebration dance is for you, I want you to do it. Visualize yourself succeeding, hold on to your dream, and trust that no obstacle is too big for you. Chapter 2.